The alarm didn't sound. That was the first sign something was wrong. Sergeant Vera Okafor noticed at the moment the Valdres Queen's transport descended through Deck 9's atmosphere shield. No klaxon, no perimeter alert, no automated voice announcing an unscheduled arrival. Someone had silenced the system. Someone with access deep enough to make an entire security layer disappear. Vera didn't reach for her radio. She simply stood from her chair in the observation corridor, straightened her uniform, and walked toward the docking bay at a pace that looked unhurried to anyone watching. Inside, every nerve she had was already calculating. The Valdres were not known for subtlety. Their queen, Empress Serethfal, third of her broodline, ruler of 14 harvested systems, traveled with a retinue of 40 warriors minimum. Each one stood nearly 3 meters tall, armored in biological plate that grew from their own skin, and carried sonic lances that could liquefy internal organs at 15 meters. They were the apex predators of the Outer Veil, and they knew it. They announced it. They wanted you afraid before they arrived. So when the transport touched down with no warning and no herald, Vera's instincts told her this wasn't a diplomatic visit. She tapped her earpiece once, the silent signal that meant assemble without noise, and kept walking. Behind her, without a word exchanged, 6 figures detached from shadows, maintenance alcoves, and crowded corridors. They fell in step at staggered distances, looking like unrelated personnel going about their day. They were not. They were the reason Deck 9 still existed. Squad Harrow, the most classified unit in the Terran Compact's entire military structure. On paper, they were a multi-environment threat assessment team. In practice, they were the people you sent when the problem was too dangerous to classify as a problem. Corporal Jin had walked with a limp from a Valdres sonic lance he had survived on Kara Station. He carried nothing visible, which meant he was carrying 6 things invisible. Private Sable moved through the crowd with her head down and her augmented eyes mapping every thermal signature in a 100-meter radius. Specialist Darrow had once disarmed a weaponized drone swarm using a piece of scrap wire and a food container. He was currently eating a ration bar and looking bored. None of them looked dangerous. That was their greatest weapon. Vera reached the observation window that overlooked the docking bay just as the transport's ramp descended. She counted the boots before she saw the bodies. 12 warriors. Not 40. A hunting party, not a court. Then, she saw the queen. Serethfal was everything the intelligence file said she was. Tall, exoskeletal, her crown frills fanned wide in a posture of absolute dominance. Her eyes were compound and gold and moved with the mechanical precision of a creature that had never once in its life felt threatened. She wore no armor. She didn't need to. She was the armor. And she was walking directly toward the educational residential quarter. Vera's jaw tightened. She knew what was there. The whole ship knew, though most tried not to think about it. The ERQ housed dependents, families of station crew. And, in Section 7 of the ERQ, 3 days a week, there was a classroom. 40 children, ages 6 to 14, from 17 different human colonies. Their parents were Squad Harrow's predecessors. Retired ghosts. People who had done things so dark and so precise that the Compact had quietly moved their families onto a secure vessel where no one would think to look for leverage. The children didn't know what their parents had done. They just knew that their mothers and fathers were away on important work and that the teachers here were very kind and that the stars outside the viewport were beautiful. The Queen was walking toward that classroom. Vera moved. She didn't run. Running attracted attention, triggered defensive responses, and wasted energy she might need in the next 4 minutes. She walked fast, cut through a maintenance shaft, emerged 40 meters ahead of the Valdres procession, and positioned herself at the corridor junction that led to Section 7. She was alone. Her team was in motion but still 90 seconds out. The Queen rounded the corner and stopped. For a long moment, the two of them regarded each other. 12 warriors raised their lances. Vera didn't move a centimeter. She kept her hands loose at her sides, her expression neutral, her eyes on the Queen's face rather than her weapons, a deliberate signal. I am not afraid of your lances. I am watching you. Serethfal tilted her crown frills, a gesture of mild curiosity. Then, in perfect standard, with an accent like grinding stone, she said, "One human. Unarmed. In my path." Vera said, "You've made a navigational error, Empress. This deck is restricted." The Queen's gold eyes moved past her to the corridor beyond. I know exactly where I am. That was the second sign that something was wrong. The classroom smelled like chalk dust and synthetic citrus from the air recyclers, and 14-year-old Mara Osei was ignoring both the lesson and the smell in favor of a piece of paper she was folding under her desk. She had been folding paper since she was 4. Her father had taught her, her father, who she hadn't seen in 2 years, who sent voice messages that were always exactly 3 minutes long and always ended the same way. Keep your eyes open, Mara. Notice what others don't. She had inherited his hands. Steady. Precise. Never rushed. The paper became a bird in 17 folds. At the front of the room, Teacher Aldous was explaining orbital mechanics to a group of 8-year-olds who were more interested in the viewport. The older students occupied the back half of the room, working independently. Mara sat in the front row of the older group, which was the 3rd row overall, which meant she was close enough to the door to hear things the others couldn't. She heard the boots first. Heavy. Rhythmic. Wrong rhythm. Not human. Not the doubled beat of standard crew footfall, but something triphasic, like the gait of a creature with a different center of gravity. She looked up. Teacher Aldous was still talking. Nobody else had noticed. Mara set her paper bird on the desk and turned to face the door. It opened. The woman who came through first was not the Queen. Mara didn't know that yet. She only knew that the woman moved like someone accustomed to rooms falling silent when she entered, and that the things behind her were not human and were very large, and that the room did fall silent, all at once, like a held breath. Teacher Aldous turned around. He was a gentleman who had taught on 4 different colony ships and had a gift for making complex things feel simple. He had no combat training. He had never needed it. His face went pale in a way that Mara recognized, not fear of pain, but fear of consequences. The kind of pale that meant the thing in front of you was a problem with no good solutions. The Queen entered. She filled the doorway. Her crown frills were retracted now, which Mara would later learn meant she was being deliberately non-threatening, a courtesy she extended to no one in any official record. Her compound eyes moved across the room, row by row, child by child, with the methodical precision of an archivist cataloguing inventory. They stopped on Mara. Not on the group. On Mara specifically. Mara did not look away. Her father had told her, looking away is a choice. Make sure it's yours. Teacher Aldous stepped forward, and his voice came out steadier than his face suggested he was capable of. This section is not on the approved access manifest. I'll need to ask. Silence, the Queen said. Not loudly. She didn't need volume. The word landed like a door closing. Aldous stopped. One of the younger children started crying quietly. A boy named Paul grabbed the hand of the girl next to him. The Queen walked forward, past Aldous, between the rows of desks, until she stood in front of Mara's row. The warriors positioned themselves at the room's exits. 12 sonic lances at rest, not raised, but ready. The difference was 3 seconds. Then, the Queen did something no one expected. She crouched down to Mara's eye level. A creature of 14 systems and immeasurable power folded itself to meet a 14-year-old girl, and it studied her face with those compound gold eyes at close enough range that Mara could see her own reflection in each facet, 47 small Maras, all looking back. You are the daughter of Kenji Osei, the Queen said. It wasn't a question. Mara felt her fingers tighten on the edge of her desk. What did he tell you, the Queen said, about the moon at Kareth 6? The room was so quiet that Mara could hear the recycler cycling. She could hear Paul breathing. She could hear her own heartbeat, which was fast but not panicked. Her father had trained her for fast, because fast was survivable. It was frozen that got you killed. Nothing, Mara said. The Queen's crown frills extended 1 centimeter. He told you something. Children of his kind are always told something. He told me to keep my eyes open, Mara said. And notice what others don't. Something shifted in the Queen's posture, barely visible, a microcompression of her thoracic plates. Something that might, in a human, have been called discomfort. That is not enough, the Queen said, very quietly. He had something. Something taken from my colony's data core that belongs to my broodline. And now he is gone, and you are here, and you are all that remains of his access chain. She reached out, slow and deliberate, and picked up the paper bird from Mara's desk. She stuttered it for 3 seconds. Then, Sergeant Vera Okafor walked through the door. She was alone. She had one hand visible and one at her side. Her face was perfectly calm. She said, "Empress, I believe this conversation was meant to happen on the bridge." The Queen did not turn around. "You are persistent, Sergeant." "I'm paid to be." "You were paid," the Queen corrected, "to keep my retinue out of this room. You failed." "I slowed you by 4 minutes," Vera said. "That was the job." Now the Queen turned. Her warriors raised their lances one silent increment. Vera didn't move. 4 minutes accomplishes nothing, the Queen said. "It accomplished enough," Vera said. And then the lights went out. The darkness lasted exactly 2 seconds. In 2 seconds, a great many things happened that no one in the room fully understood until afterward. Mara dropped beneath her desk. Not because she panicked, because her father had told her, years ago, in a voice that was careful and serious in the way that meant this is real information, not a story. If lights go out in an enclosed space and you do not know the geometry of the threat, get low and get small and stay that way until someone you trust tells you otherwise. She heard the sonic lances charge, a high-pitched whine building toward discharge. She felt the vibration in her molars. She heard Sergeant Vera's voice, completely even, "Stand down." She heard something else, a sound she had no name for, a low, resonant hum that seemed to come from the walls themselves, from the floor, from the air, a sound that built in a way that made her think of a held note, except that this note had weight and teeth. The lancers did not fire. When the lights returned, Vera was standing exactly where she had been. Her hand was still at her side. But the 12 warriors were in different positions. 4 of them pressed against the wall, 3 crouched, 2 facing the wrong direction entirely. 1 had his lance raised at nothing. Their formations were broken. Whatever had happened in the dark had moved through them like a current through water. Darrow was standing near the back exit, eating the last of his ration bar. Jin stood by the left wall with one hand in his pocket. Sable was kneeling beside the crying child, one hand on the boy's shoulder, speaking quietly. 2 more members of Squad Harrow stood at positions Mara hadn't seen them arrive at, which meant they had come in through the vents, or through the floor, or through the impossible spaces between seconds. The Queen had not moved. She was still holding the paper bird. She looked at Vera. Then she looked at the room, truly looked, the way an apex predator looks when it has just discovered that the field it is standing in is occupied by something it did not account for. "You are not security," the Queen said slowly. "No," Vera agreed. "You are not diplomats." "No." The Queen's crown frills moved in a complex pattern, the Valdris equivalent of rapid recalculation. "These children," she said. "Their parents." "Yes," Vera said. A long silence. "Kenji Osei," the Queen said. "He is dead." It was not a question this time either. Mara heard it from under her desk and the word dead landed on her chest like something physical. She made no sound. Her hands were flat on the floor. The floor was cold. "He was lost on assignment 14 months ago," Vera said. "I'm sorry." The Queen looked at the paper bird again. Then she looked at the front row, where Mara's empty chair sat, and the bird sat on the desk, and the desk sat in a room full of children whose parents had made the dark spaces of the galaxy a little safer for everyone, including, and this was the part that the Queen appeared to be processing, for the Valdris, because Kereth 6 had not been a human operation. The data stolen from the Valdris Colony Corps had been stolen by a third party, a cartel that intended to weaponize it against both their species. Kenji Osei had gone in to recover it. He had recovered it. And he had never come out. "The data," the Queen said. "It was returned to us." "Through official channels. 18 months ago," Vera said. "Before he went in." The Queen was quiet for a very long time. Then she set the paper bird back on the desk, very carefully, with a precision that suggested she understood what it was, not a toy, but a message. The last fold of a father's hands passed down to his daughter, who had been told to keep her eyes open and notice what others didn't. Mara climbed out from under her desk. Every eye in the room went to her. The warriors. The Queen. Teacher Aldous, still pale at the front of the room. Paul and his neighbor, hand still in hand. Sable, kneeling by the crying boy, whose crying had stopped. Mara picked up the paper bird. She looked at the Queen. She said, "He used to make these for me when I was small, before the assignments got longer." The Queen looked at her for a long moment. "He was capable," she said. "Unusually so." "I know," Mara said. Another silence, different from the ones before. Not tense. Something else. Something that had no clean name in either language. "You asked what he told me about Kareth 6, Mara said. "He didn't tell me anything about it. But he told me that sometimes the most important missions are the ones nobody knows happened." The Queen's crown frills moved again. Slowly. Fully extended this time. Not threat posture. Something else. Mara would learn later, from Vera, who had studied Valdris body language for 11 years, that full extension crown frill display in a non-combat context was the closest the Valdris had to a bow. The Queen said, "Tell me your name." "Mara Osei." "Mara Osei." The Queen said it as if filing it somewhere. "You will be watched." Vera tensed, almost imperceptibly. But Mara looked the Queen in the eyes, all 47 reflections of herself, and said, "I know. I'm used to it." Something that might have been satisfaction, or respect, or the alien architecture of both, crossed the Queen's features. She straightened to her full height. She turned to Vera. "The navigational error," she said, "was intentional. I needed to see what was here." And Vera said, "I have seen enough." She looked once more at the room, the children, the desks, the paper bird, the squad members standing in the impossible positions of people who had never once in their lives been where they appeared to be. The compact protects its own. "We do," Vera said. "So do we," the Queen said. And then, with 12 warriors falling back into formation, she walked out of the room, out of the corridor, back through the deck, and up the ramp of her transport, which sealed and ascended without ceremony through the atmosphere shield and disappeared into the black. The alarm, which had been silent since her arrival, finally sounded. 3 soft tones, the automated all clear, 12 minutes too late. In the classroom, no one spoke for a long moment. Then, Paul, age 8, looked at Mara and said, "Who was that?" Mara folded the paper bird's wing back where it had been bent. She smoothed it with her thumb. She thought about 14 months ago, and 3-minute voice messages, and a man she would never stop listening for. "Someone who needed to check on something," she said. Teacher Aldous sat down heavily in his chair. Vera exchanged one look with Jin, who raised his ration bar hand in a small salute toward the door the Queen had used. Sable helped the small boy back to his seat. Darrow crumpled his ration wrapper and pocketed it. Mara set the paper bird back on her desk. Front and center. She kept her eyes open, like she'd been taught. She noticed, because she always noticed, that Sergeant Vera's hand, the one that had stayed at her side the whole time, was shaking. Just slightly. Just for a second. Then, it stopped, and Vera turned around, and she was steady again, and the stars outside the viewport were beautiful, and the recyclers hummed their synthetic citrus into the air, and in the front row of a classroom on a ship that didn't officially exist, the daughter of a ghost sat with a paper bird and the particular, quiet, unbreakable knowledge that her father had mattered. That he had mattered to people she would never know. That he had mattered to an empire. And that somehow, in the precise and deliberate architecture of everything he had done, he had made sure she would be safe, not by hiding her from the dangerous things, but by placing her, carefully, exactly, at the center of the people who knew how to survive them. The lesson on orbital mechanics resumed. Nobody mentioned the Queen again. But every child in that room, from the 6-year-olds watching the stars to Mara in the front row with her still hands and open eyes, would remember the sound of 12 sonic lances powering down in the dark, and the quiet that followed, and what it meant that the quiet had come at all. Some rooms look ordinary from the outside. Some rooms are the reason the dangerous things turn around.